Welcome to the session number 7 of the e-learning series hosted by NIUA and WRI India. This session is on inclusive climate action planning. So the objective of the session is to basically provide an introduction on how our cities can mainstream climate action in planning processes and present a methodology to develop a climate action plan. So in our cities, it has become very important that we consider climate impacts in our city master plans, in the growth strategies that we are making. So today we have two very eminent panelists with us, Mr. Nikhil Kolse Patil and Mr. Chirag Gajjar. And Mr. Nikhil he works as a senior manager for energy and climate mitigation program at ICLEI South Asia. He has a decade of experience in the areas of renewable energy and energy efficiency, climate change, urban sustainability, and green growth. He has supported more than 30 city and state governments in South Asian and Southeast Asian region through various projects and initiatives across these areas, specifically with a focus on GHG emission inventories and climate action planning. He's also a certified urban GHG inventory specialist under the World Bank's City Climate Planner Certificate Program. Our second panelist, Mr. Chirag Gajjar, heads the Subnational Climate Action in Climate Program at WRI India. He oversees work related to climate mitigation initiatives and expanding on topics related to national, subnational, and corporate climate strategies. He oversees the work of a team that aims to catalyze and support climate action by states, cities, and businesses for the coming years. He has been working to promote solutions to climate change for more than 15 years. And he also has a background in carbon market projects under various mechanisms. He's also a well-known expert in GHG accounting and inventory. I welcome both the panelists. Nikhil, we will start with a brief presentation from your end. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you and welcome to everyone. Glad to have this opportunity. So I'll be just taking you to a quick presentation to just give glimpses of how cities have done climate action planning and also broadly in India, a process adopted. So I'll get right into the presentation. I am from ICLEI South Asia. We are basically a city-based network which works through programs and projects to support cities across the world. And my office especially specifically supports South Asian cities on areas of urban sustainability and climate change. So coming to the topic, so what does really climate resilience mean? So climate resilience essentially includes actions which address both actions or strategies which addresses both climate mitigation as well as adaptation. In terms of mitigation actions, these essentially are actions which help reduce energy use, let's say from various buildings, from transport, and so on. Adaptation actions refer to any actions which already help us deal with impacts which are already being seen in the cities or they are envisaged in the near term. So for example, how do we build our buildings or construct our buildings in such a manner that the occupants find it comfortable given rising temperatures in cities or heat waves that we see. So a key aspect of this process or doing this or planning for this is really that all the strategy and actions, they should also be inclusive of different groups, and they should focus on vulnerable groups which typically are more affected by climate change and its impacts. So there are a number of all the typical sectors, urban sectors, they provide opportunities for climate action or to integrate climate strategies, be it transportation, the way we utilize land and its use, also buildings, infrastructure such as water supply, drainage, sewerage, solid waste management. In recent times, also health is also emerging as a critical area along with urban greening. And of course, finance is required to implement all these actions, and awareness is required so that the community and citizens can adopt and increase uptake of such actions and strategies. So in Indian cities, there are cities in India which actually have developed full-scale multi-sector action plans on climate change. The 4 cities indicated here, they do have action plans which address climate adaptation and mitigation. So these are resilience action plans. Also, all these action plans have been approved formally by the municipal councils in the 4 cities. So in these cities, these action plans, they identify and recommend actions across various sectors, like the ones we saw in the previous slides. They also set specific targets, quantitative targets for emission reduction within a particular time frame. Also, key point is that it's commendable that these 4 cities, they also have shown commitment in terms of allocating budget in their municipal, allocating finances under their municipal budget for these climate actions. So in a way, the climate action plan, it's not just a document in these cities. These cities have already incorporated the actions and strategies in their planning framework and also in the municipal budgetary cycle. So in the next few slides, I'll just share briefly a methodology and the process that has been adopted in these cities. This is the climate resilient cities methodology. This has been developed by my organization, ICLEI, given our work with various cities in the region and globally for 2 decades or so. So this is typically like most planning processes or methodologies. This includes 3 phases, which is analyze, act, accelerate. So analyze essentially includes understanding the current situation, identifying gaps and opportunities. Act implies that we look at what actions or measures can be taken, then we detail them out and we implement them. And accelerate implies that we share knowledge and then we again take stock and review and we further scale up our actions or ambition. So just quickly going to go through the 3 phases and more so the key steps. The first phase is analyze. So here a critical starting point is getting commitment from from the decision makers in the municipal corporations or the cities. So either the commissioner or the mayor. So this sets a clear directive to various departments that they can. The city is committed to undertaking this process of climate action planning and then further implementing these actions. There is also a key step in terms of institutionalization of these and involving stakeholders. This process then results in identifying climate risks and assessing the city's current services and infrastructure with respect to climate change from a climate lens as such, and then looking at how are the impacts of various climate vulnerabilities, which urban systems and infrastructure are at risk, and also in terms of the GHG emissions inventory is also another output. So key step really that cities that have undertaken climate action planning and also implemented it successfully is that there is a dedicated resource and team that drives this process, right from formulation of actions to implementation and also to monitoring the process. Also a key point is that a climate core team essentially is established in the city. So this is basically consisting of various departments from the cities. And this helps really to bring in expertise from their sector. And also it helps because the department representatives or heads, they would know that, which are the ongoing projects where there are opportunities to integrate climate actions or climate elements, where's the financing and funding coming from under various schemes from the state and national government. A key aspect is also to engage various stakeholder groups because this helps to engage stakeholders and bring in local knowledge into the process. So typically in the cities, stakeholders are engaged through larger workshops. Typically 2 to 3 workshops are held. And in the first workshop, they're informed that the city is keen to undertake climate action planning to initiate it. And then the inputs are taken at various stages from the baseline assessment also then further on to identification of what actions are possible. This is a key step because it helps to get their buy-in right from the beginning and also to because essentially the success is also dependent on them adopting these actions and in the local context, how ready are people to undertake, for example, to take on public transport in certain areas, to have pedestrianization in certain areas, and so on. So again, glimpses of the key output. So like I said, as a result of this first phase, we'll get a city profile, which is analyzed from the climate angle. So for example, this helps to identify linkages. So for instance, if in a city we see that there's a gap in solid waste management and there's littering of solid waste in and around the drains and the natural channels, then this poses a risk because in incidences of high intensity rainfall, there is a risk of flooding and waterlogging, especially if in low-lying areas where this might be happening, and there is a lack of drainage network there as well. A key output is also on the right-hand side at the bottom, a vulnerability assessment or mapping, where for each of the urban sectors, ward level, these are mapped against various climate risks like water scarcity, for example, high intensity rainfall, rising temperatures, and so on. And then all these maps are combined, they're overlain, and the city then gets a full picture of spatially at which locations, which urban sectors and services are getting impacted by climate change. And then they can take focused actions. Another key output is the GHG emission inventory, which of course looks at various emission sources and energy use and what options are there for action. The second step is to take action. So this essentially involves identifying what measures can be taken up. So coming up with a long list of measures, then prioritizing these based on the city's resources and local conditions, priorities. Further on, then these are combined from various sectors to then identify targets, and then they are implemented, they're detailed out. Some solutions will be pilot tested, then there will also be structures for monitoring of these actions and so on. A key, so again, glimpses of, how or what aspects should cities look at. So in terms of identifying interventions, so this is typically done for all sectors. And again, across sectors, there would be multiple options. So for example, if you want to address the water supply or water sector, we can take actions, actions such as rooftop harvesting, rainwater harvesting, or we can also take other actions in terms of improving the pipe network so that there is less leakage, or we can also install, advanced systems like SCADA and so on. So such actions are listed down, and then based on the prioritization and feasibility, technical, political, and also financial, and how quickly these can be implemented and how quickly they deliver impacts. So this is assessed, and then they can be prioritized. Again, in this step, a key point is to aim for infrastructure actions and also other soft measures which are related to policy and capacity building. Through this process, so cities have also, the cities which have implemented and developed climate action plans, they have involved climate core team within the corporation and also the stakeholder groups to validate this prioritization and to gain their local knowledge as well, so that what is selected as actions and the scale as well, that is realistic and it's practical, and the chances of adoption are high. A key step to ensure that all these actions don't just remain as actions on document, but they are actually implemented, is to link these to city programs and schemes. So the city, so as much as possible, if they are actually included in planning for programs and schemes, the success rate is higher. So for example, if there is a scheme on affordable housing, so including rooftop rainwater solutions, or maybe simple green building elements such as increased ventilation in buildings, designing buildings in that manner. So in that process, these can already be included, these actions can be included and demonstrated in ongoing work that the city has. The last step is, of course, implementing and piloting solutions. So this is just an example of Thane, how Thane is working on, it's implemented sensors as part of an early warning system across the city on a pilot scale. So these sensors, essentially when there is high tide and there is high intensity rainfall, the city is able to get early warnings, maybe around 20 to 25 minutes in advance for incidences of waterlogging and flooding. And of course, such solutions then need to be monitored and they can be scaled up appropriately. That's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikhil. That was a very interesting presentation. And thank you for taking us through the methodology of how you have gone ahead and prepared the climate action plan for those 4 cities. I would now like to invite Mr. Chirag to present his work on the same.
Thank you so much, CQ and IUA and Ankita for inviting me to speak here. In fact, sorry about the background noise, I can't control it. But Nikhil's presentation has helped me a lot. I think I can skip some of the slides or maybe cut short on the presentation of some of these things. But let me try to provide what we've been doing with some of the cities, Indian cities, while helping them develop their own climate action plan. These are some of the examples of the ongoing work that we've been doing with some of the cities here in India. So because the work is ongoing, it has not been published. I've asked the name of the cities and the locations where we are working, but I'll be happy to answer any questions any of you have. Just a basic start. This is also something similar to what Nikhil had presented. Briefly, what is a climate action plan? It's a document which creates a framework for cities to address the causes and impacts of the climate change. It basically outlines actions to reduce or mitigate greenhouse gas emissions in coordination with other city level plans, for example, development plans, transport plans, health plans, etc. It also outlines actions to address vulnerable city locations from flooding, drought, temperature fluctuations, species change caused by the climate change, among others. City climate action planning will be effective only when identified prioritized solutions are included in the annual municipal budgets, something that Nikhil also spoke about, and in other relevant schemes. Basically, mainstreaming of the climate solutions into the development priorities of the city is an essential step to ensure that the climate action plan is successful. Inclusive and equitable climate action plan should be the new normal to achieve more functional city. It essentially means that you have to put people first during the planning for solutions, in implementing the actions and distributing the impacts of the solutions in an equitable manner. In summary, applying an equity lens while adopting actions that help mitigate and adapt to the impacts of climate change by ensuring that the needs of the vulnerable groups are met. Now, cities are made up of dynamic and complex social, political, economic, and natural systems, and are best placed to deliver both climate action that is fair, equitable, and beneficial for all. As cities grow, it is increasingly critical for urban decision makers to create plans and enact policies to address climate change that prioritize at-risk communities or vulnerable communities, such as informal workers, migrants, women, children, people with disabilities, among others. First and foremost, the inclusive planning and policy design can address the urban inequities that are pre-existing uh, and, and worsened by the climate change. Secondly, it is a must to put people at the heart of the climate action planning process, since they possess the local knowledge and expertise of the communities. Thirdly, applying an equity lens to understand how certain communities are impacted by climate change, what existing social and economic barriers that they face, and how this impacts their ability to benefit from the climate action. WRI, in partnership with C40, have co-developed inclusive action planning toolkit. The toolkit helps cities ensure that the processes are rooted in genuine engagement of diverse set of stakeholders suffering from inequality and the impacts of climate change. Policies are actively designed with people, fairness, and justice at the center of decision making. Clear mechanisms are identified for measuring, monitoring, and evaluating both the direct impacts and the distribution of the impacts of the climate solutions. In view of this, we've partnered with several cities in India to help them develop their city level climate action plan in line with the requirement under the Climate Smart Cities Assessment Framework launched by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. We've used elements of the inclusive climate action planning in our ongoing work with the cities. We will now take a look at some of the findings that we've done. We basically adopted a 4-step approach. As the first step, a city level planning workshop was organized sometime last year in February 2020, just before we went into the lockdown. We saw the participations not just from the respective cities or departments that are responsible at the city level, but we also encourage participation from many state level departments who sometimes are the custodians of the data, or they are also the custodians of the policies or the implementation of certain actions in the urban areas. We used secondary research and stakeholder consultations to map institutional setup, policy, and regulatory environment, budgetary allocations, understand ongoing initiatives, looked at the socio-economic profile of the different cities that we work with, identified key development priorities along with the key climate risks. The brainstorming workshop and the secondary research helped establish a local context for climate solution that needs to be mainstream into the development priorities. In the second step, extensive desk review of the CSCF reports, smart city proposals, government reports, and other documents was carried out to identify key issues and gaps in achieving the priorities. This has led to a developing of a bucket list of solutions for individual cities, which have been detailed in the draft climate action plans that we had submitted to the city. Now, all of this has happened after the lockdown, so everything sort of moved to a remote working, and some of the challenges that are associated with the remote working, we also face those challenges. We are currently in the middle of prioritization and sectoral pathway development. The stakeholder consultations are taking place to narrow the number of key solutions for city climate strategies, and sectoral pathways are ongoing. The inputs that we will receive through these consultations during the prioritization stage will help us developing and finalizing the implementation plan under the city climate action plans. Finally, once we are able to finalize the city cap along with the implementation plan, a final set of implementation document will be handed over to the cities. We are hoping that this exercise will be completed in the next couple of months. Now, as part of the first step to establish the context or need, we also look in this particular case, one particular state. We also looked at, it's also important for us to understand how the state is growing and urbanizing. The economic growth rate of the state was the second highest in the country during FY 13 to 17, and it increased at a CAGR of 11% between 2015 to 2020. The urban areas of the state accommodate roughly 20% of the state population, and the state is closely following the national trajectory of urbanization with a growth rate of 2.3% per annum. Given this trend, it is prudent that the cities need to create systems that provide a high quality of life for all, for all citizens, which needs a new vision of how to build and manage cities while also being resilient to the likely impacts of the climate change. Further, we looked at the key climate risks faced by the cities. The urban areas in the state are prone to extreme climate-related weather events and face multiple climate risks, including heat waves, urban flooding, storm, and drought, among others. One of the city in the state is among the top 10 hottest cities in India, with an average temperature at above 40 degrees Celsius. And in 2019, the temperature reached 49 degrees Celsius as well. 6 out of the 7 cities that we are working in this particular state have witnessed urban flooding in the recent years. Different cities are also projected to face increasing instances of thunderstorms in the future. Some cities are expected to witness higher number of drought years. An annual increase of 2 to 3 weeks per year in the next 2 decades is also projected. Some urban areas depend on water that is transported from a distance, making them vulnerable in the water sector as well. Such events are likely to worsen the situation in the near future as well. On the other hand, the total CO2 emissions in the state have grown by 65% between 2005 and 15, with a major contribution coming in from the energy sector. Some of the subsectors such as agriculture and commercial have nearly tripled. Transport emissions have grown 2.4 times, and public electricity generation emissions have nearly doubled. After developing the city context, the next step of the planning process focused on the needs assessment. Identifying the needs helps answer the question, how might we tackle climate action based on the needs of our cities and citizens, and understanding the needs of various frontline communities, including women, informal workers, among others. As a next step in the needs assessment, we looked at we analyzed the inclusivity and equity implications of the potential climate solutions using action analysis database as part of the ICAP toolkit that I mentioned earlier. Thirdly, based on the detailed action analysis database, the policy recommendations, and the need to build to provide clear steps for a city to take in order to climate actions in an inclusive way have also been identified. Now, while identifying the needs, we looked at the state's vision, which basically can be classified under 3 categories of economic, social, and environment. The state we work in is an agrarian state, as we know that urbanization in the state is closely following the national trend. The urban areas must provide equitable access to jobs that have positive economic impact on its citizens, and at the same time, the reliability of the service delivery must build resilience of the citizens. Under the environment section, solutions must promote climate-friendly practices, including but not limited to revitalizing of the groundwater resources and management of waste disposal and water conservation. In summary, the climate solutions for cities in this particular state need to focus on emission reduction and air quality improvement amidst high energy emissions, with a growing focus on societal outcomes considering rapid population growth. All this while ensuring positive impact on jobs and overall economy. Now, cities are engines of economic growth. A city's ability to act on climate will largely depend on its economic growth and the population size. We use these parameters to categorize cities into 4 types. This is where we've created a typology or introduced an additional element in the traditional climate action planning process that is happening. What we've done is we've identified 4 types of cities. First is a thriving city, which has a high income today and a high ratio of projected growth in GDP per capita to projected growth in population between 2001 and 2030. Cities in this category are not only economically strong today, but their economic growth is also projected to outpace their urban population growth in the coming years. The next type is the emerging cities, which have a low GDP per capita today and a high ratio of projected growth in GDP over the population growth between 2021 and 30. While their economic strength is low today, the projected economic growth is greater than the projected population growth, indicating an increase in the economic productivity over the next decade. The next type is the stabilizing cities, which have a high GDP per capita today, but a low projected growth in GDP. Basically, it essentially means that the population growth in these cities will outpace the income growth in these cities. The cities are economically stronger today, but expected to have a lower economic growth relative to the population than compared to emerging or the thriving cities. The last type is the aspiring cities that have low GDP per capita today and a low ratio of income growth relative to the population growth in the next decade. These cities are struggling because in the near future, they are likely to experience more rapid population growth than per capita income, economic growth, pointing to an impending resource growth. In the next slide, we will categorize the cities according to the typology that we've discussed in the previous slide. On the x-axis, we have the ratio of income growth, and on the y-axis, we have the population growth. At the point, we've used the logarithmic scale to respond to the skewness towards the higher values or the larger values. The point where both the axis cross is the India value. As we can see in 2020, over the last decade, City 1 and City 4 have stabilized, whereas City 3, 6, and 7 have demonstrated a high population growth. But as we move along in the next decade, in 2030, City 4 emerges as a thriving city. Basically, it's a military base. It has 4 ordnance factories. It has witnessed a phenomenal growth of garment manufacturing during the last 10 years. It employs more than 50,000 skilled workers in this particular sector. The city is also surrounded by rich mineral belt, and 20,000 gauges of thick wood is processed every day. The city also offers excellent educational facilities with 6 universities and 21 engineering colleges, making it an educational hub. It also serves as a gateway to people and ethnic tourism as well. Essentially, all of these activities means that the city's economic productivity will increase over the next decade. On the other hand, City 3's economic growth will stabilize by 2030. However, its ratio of projected economic growth over population growth will be lower than that of a thriving city, that is City 4. And City 2's population growth will outpace its economic growth. Let's now take a look at one simple sectoral analysis for all the 7 cities that we've carried out. In this chart, CSCF score is plotted on the x-axis, while the y-axis shows annual electricity consumption per capita. Black bubbles are total electricity per capita per annum, and RE per capita as yellow bubbles. The bubble size shows the population of this respective cities. Here's a simple piece of analysis. City 1 with a population less than that of City 3 has a relatively higher electricity consumption of about 900 kilowatt hour per capita per year, but lower RE penetration. We've seen that the City 1 is making efforts to improve the solar infrastructure in the city, but it needs to increase or accelerate its efforts to increase the portion of RE in its energy mix through citizen participation and promotion of rooftop solar. On the other hand, amongst all the 7 cities, City 2 has the highest per capita of RE consumption of 64 kilowatt hour per person per year. Overall, we find that all the 7 cities in the state need to prioritize renewable energy within the city energy mix. We've also identified several data issues while we were working with the cities. Our research and consultations reveal that the data reliability issues have been identified that needs to be analyzed further through deeper engagement with the cities. For example, City 4 that you see here, let me just show you. This is the City 4 here. The City 4's population is twice that of either City 6 or City 7, but it's consuming half the electricity than that of City 6 or City 7, pointing to a gap in the way the data has been collected or reported in the cities here, which basically indicates that cities will need hand-holding support to address such data gaps. In summary, as the cities grow and develop, their electricity consumption is likely to grow as they aim to achieve their development priorities. While they expand, the cities need to ensure higher renewable energy in their energy mix than what they have today, along with several other mechanisms that will also help them use the energy more effectively and more efficiently. While we have identified solutions across the thematic areas, CSCF thematic areas for all the cities, but here it is a priority matrix where we look at what are the top 2 or 3 priorities for different cities. For example, City 1, which is a stabilizing city, its economic growth will remain stabilized over the next decade with rising population. Energy and waste are important priorities. Energy is a priority to do high per capita consumption with low RE penetration, while waste management becomes important as city generates 67 kg waste per capita per day. The solutions should focus on innovative business models to ensure zero dumping of waste to landfill and possibly converting waste to energy. I will not go through each and every city. As a final step, we are currently in the process of finalizing this implementation plan for the cities. Because the mainstreaming of climate change into development priority requires coordination among multiple actors, institutions, and processes, the journey from a plan on paper to action on the ground can be slow. Drawing on published literature, case examples, and expert insights, WRI has identified 5 factors that can work together like a set of gears to help accelerate move from commitments and plans to implementation. 5 components of work together to bridge the implementation gap. Policy frameworks or political commitments, mandates, laws, and legislations made by the government to mainstream climate considerations into development plans or sectoral plans. Leadership or initiatives introduced and supported by political leaders, influential ministries, and other non-state actors to drive mainstreaming efforts. Information and tools for mainstreaming climate change, including learning initiatives, training for access to knowledge and expertise, coordination mechanisms such as interministerial steering committees or interdepartmental steering committees, task force designed to support mainstreaming efforts across policies and sectors and facilitate the public-private coordination. And lastly, supportive financial processes such as expenditure tracking initiatives, budget tagging efforts, and special funds set up by the government to support the mainstream efforts. During our exercise, we also observed that cities face several common barriers. Some of them are listed here. For example, capacity and staffing. Cities may be broadly committed to climate action, but city staff are often unable to articulate a compelling case for individual projects or policies. Cities also need dedicated staff to move projects from idea to execution. They often have access to technical expertise to develop a program, but limited staff to guide projects, which causes the recurring delays, and it also limits the projects that can be identified at the city level. Robust community engagement, as cities increase their focus on equity, community engagement becomes even more critical. It is important for cities to invest in engagement tools that help them reach populations and make their planning and implementation process more impactful and inclusive. Coordination, cities may have demonstrated capacities to identify certain climate projects, but cities struggle to build buy-in from key agencies for execution or even accessing finance. Access to finance is a known barrier or a challenge. While there are several funding mechanisms available to support climate action, most exist at the national level. These funds are often competitive in nature, and it can be harder for smaller cities to compete. There is an urgent need to develop a city climate finance fund to help cities with pre-development activities. Finally, data availability and utilization. As we've seen in one of the slides earlier, data management is a challenge. Most importantly, many important data sets may be available, are either not available or not being utilized by the cities. This makes it difficult to prioritize or get the climate projects prioritized during the regular process. There's barriers when overcome enables greater integration of various stakeholders to not only plan for climate change, but also implement solutions in an inclusive and transparent manner. Thank you so much. I'll end my presentation here.
All right, so we can proceed with a couple of questions for the panel discussion. My first question would be to Nikhil. Since you're working with many cities for preparing the climate action plan at city level, but in India we have the state action plans and the national action plans. So in your experience, how are states, what is the role of the state in promoting the cities to develop climate action plans? And how can these cities initiate the process if four cities, like you said, which had prepared, you gave examples. So if any city wants to start the process of climate action planning, what would be the first few steps that they should be taking?
Yeah, thanks for this question. So coming to the first bit, I think, like you indicated, there is already a framework in the National Action Plan, the NDC, and the state action plans. And India's NDC also has quite a bit of urban focus. It's one of sort of the top ranked NDCs in terms of urban focus. So there is that intent. With respect to the SAPCCs also, there is a framework, but yeah, in terms of scope for improvement, I think there are opportunities where there can be, requirements that cities in the states, or at least important economic centers, or ones which are growing faster, they do come up with local level action plans, climate action plans. And a key aspect is also that, like Chirag mentioned in his last slides, in terms of data management, that is also a key aspect where we see that in different programs and schemes, there is reporting happening, but all this is not linked. It goes to different departments and line ministries. And like he mentioned, that impacts selection and prioritization of projects. So, the comprehensive of the action plan. Also, there is scope for increased capacity building. Again, a number of states do have, very ambitious visions of being carbon neutral, say by 2040 or so. And a number of states have also taken actions in terms of climate cells and knowledge management centers that they have. So such centers play a key role in terms of, actually ensuring that various city officials and departments, they are conversant in terms of what climate action means, what does planning for it mean. And this can, of course, happen gradually. Also, a link to financing, if there can be climate considerations or climate criteria included in financing. So that will automatically ensure that, projects which are implemented, they sort of have climate benefits already included. A number of these projects which are implemented actually do help the climate, but that's what the key thing is, that these benefits are not always accounted for, or they're not always measured. Coming to the second part, in terms of how do cities go about it? So I think it's important to realize that this is a process, and cities can take it on based on their local capacity, local context, at the pace that they are comfortable with. And a key point that we have noticed in not only these four cities, but around 15-20 cities which we have supported, is commitment from the leadership is really important, because that really gives a clear directive to various departments, that the city is serious about it. There will be backing, there will be resources, there is enough will to take climate action on and to implement it. Also ensuring there is dedicated capacity, or dedicated teams and staff, again, who are deployed on this, because in our cities, our municipal officers do work a lot, but then they have a number of other responsibilities. So that's why they're ensuring that there is a dedicated team with the knowledge and with also the time to take this on is important. Yeah, and I think as a final takeaway, I would say, yeah, it's important that cities do start on it, but like I said, they don't need to start full-fledged, or it does not it's a process, so it depends on the city's capacity and context. But yeah, these are some of the points that would help cities kick off the process, and ensuring that multiple departments and stakeholders are engaged early on. That helps because in cities which do have second, third generation action plans now, it always started slow, but there was a wider engagement of officers, of stakeholders, and now climate change and action is sort of in their regular work. They speak about it, they integrate it, they're looking to consider it in their day-to-day work. Yeah, that's it from me.
Thank you, Nikhil. Chirag, would you like to add on to any of those points for the questions?
Thanks, Ankita. I think Nikhil has covered a number of things. I'll just add a few different elements to what he has captured. Just going back a little bit, National Action Plan on Climate Change, one of the missions that it has focuses on creating knowledge management centers at the state level, right? And NAPCC, when it came out in 2009 and 10, that became a sort of a document to drive the actions at the state level in India. And that's after that document, a lot of states came up with the nodal agencies with the support of the Department of Science and Technology, who was in charge of that mission. And they started working on the state action plans on climate change and so on and so forth. Now, if you look at that journey that the states have, okay, where they started after 2009 and 10, I think cities in India, barring few cities who have had some help from the consultants, most of the other cities in India are at the same stage. The Climate Smart Cities Assessment Framework has come up, which is driving the climate actions in the urban India. It is providing a framework to drive the climate action. It is very focused. It doesn't burden the city with too many things. It identifies the 5 thematic areas in which the city needs to talk about the climate action. And as they build their capacity, I think there is a scope to include or scale up the climate action at the city level. So there is an element of experience which is available at the state level. And this is what the cities need to bank on: the national experience and the state experience in implementing their own climate solutions. So I'll just stop here.
Thank you. Thank you. That is really important, that there's a linkage between the previous state action plans and the national action plan. So my question for you, Chirag, would be how could you bring probably more coherence in the state action plans and city action plans, probably from your own experience right now, as you shared that your plans, they are under process. So how did you go about in bringing that coherence as much as possible?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Very important question. Again, I'll carry forward the example that I gave. So when the first SAPCCs were developed, the focus was on adaptation. It was 100% adaptation focused. Now, when the states are revising their state action plans on climate change, we can actually see the difference. We've been supporting several states in India regarding that process, and we've seen from the previous exercise to the current exercise, what is the difference? There are many departments and stakeholders which are now involved in the process. A review happens, inputs are considered, and the actions are refined. It now includes both adaptation as well as mitigation component and in the state action plan on climate change. And these strategies are formed on addressing the climate related issues which are impacting the state. Okay. Now coming to the city level, when cities are developing this climate action plan, in our case, the 8 or 10 cities that we are supporting right now, our engagement isn't only with the city. Our engagement is also at the state level. So we have been in touch with, or we have been engaging with the state nodal agency on climate change. We've been engaging with the urban development department at the state level. And then we've been also engaging with the cities at the city level, so that there is a coherence that is brought right from the beginning. Now, what it does is whenever the state nodal agencies are responsible for SAPCC, they're able to bring in the SAPCC angle when we are working on the climate action plan at the city level. The urban development department is able to bring in the urbanization into the city level climate action plan. And there is a national framework which is available. So there is a synchronization of different efforts happens from different governance levels. This is the way we are approaching, and this is where the ICAP toolkit that we have, Inclusive Climate Action Planning Toolkit, that helps us identify which are the impacted groups over and above the government stakeholders. What are the citizen groups? What are the communities that are impacted? And how do we engage with those communities to ensure that this identification of the solution is inclusive in nature? We use the local knowledge which is available, right? Most of the times what has happened is consultants come in, prepare the plan, and they go out. So there is no ownership at the city level or any other level. I think that is something we need to create, and that is what we are hoping to create through the exercise that we are doing.
Thank you. That was quite insightful, and probably will take one of the questions also. I think I can maybe ask it right now because you mentioned stakeholders. So basically, who are the key stakeholders involved, and how do you basically engage stakeholders at various stages, considering you also mentioned that this time, due to the pandemic, it has been a little bit difficult to engage. So what kind of maybe steps you took to ensure that all stakeholders are engaged?
Yeah, thanks. It's a bit tricky question to answer. The reason is no matter how many number of stakeholders I say, I'll always miss out on somebody, right? So the simple answer is that everyone is a stakeholder who is impacted by the activities that are happening in a particular city. But just to put things into the context, I think city level officials are definitely city engineers, people who are the custodian of the data that will inform the city inventory development or identification of the vulnerability or hotspots within the city. They are very important. Sometimes the data lies at the state or the national level, so you'll have to identify the list of agencies that will be that you need to reach out to. Sometimes it's some of the private companies. For example, few cities have private electricity generators, right, who supply the electricity to the city. So they become your stakeholders. Transport bodies, both at the state level as well as at the regional level as well as at the urban level, also becomes important. Then there are citizen groups who work in the city on various issues that are very particular, very important to that particular cities. And of course, the citizens themselves are very important. In the absence of, our travel is restricted, right? Even the pandemic is still going on. So it's difficult to engage with each and everyone. To the extent possible, we try to reach out to as many people as possible over email, but that limits your ability to take inputs and assess the impacts that is going to happen on the outside. So whenever it is possible, you keep a room open to engage with the stakeholder groups at a later point in time as well. The climate action plan is not a one-time exercise. It's a exercise. You identify the current status, you identify where you need to be in the long term, identify the actions that will take you to the long run, and evaluate your progress periodically and do course correction. So it's an ongoing exercise. You have to keep room open for the engagement at a later point in time as well.
Thank you. Indeed, that is a question, quite a tricky question, but yes, I have one last question for Nikhil. This is actually for both, but we'll first go to Nikhil. So from your experience of working in preparing climate action plans, can you highlight 3 key things or 3 key steps that cities must do to need to adopt for enabling the preparation of the city climate action plan as well as the implementation?
Sure. Yeah. Taking a cue from the previous question, I think, like Chirag also mentioned, stakeholder engagement is really critical, and ensuring that linkage and convergence with the state departments, like he was saying, UDD, Transport Department, etc., because that is where, in terms of infrastructure and development, a lot of planning and funding is linked. So ensuring such stakeholders and also other stakeholders are engaged, because that really implies your action plan will be successful. So just to give an example, if you engage real estate developers and architects, for example, and if buildings and energy is a focus area, once you consult with them, you will get insights and perspectives, that why certain solutions are being taken up, or maybe what are the barriers for certain solutions, which would then help you identify specific actions that you can take, and not just include actions in your action plan for the sake of it, but have something that has more chances of success. Similarly, maybe if you engage with community groups or NGOs or technical institutes, they might have a better understanding of, let's say, why public transport or non-motorized infrastructure is not working for a certain set of people. So engagement and consultation with stakeholders is important, ensuring that key decision makers and also groups, more or less, to ensure that your effort is streamlined. If you can reach out to groups and associations, that helps. This will just give you quick inputs, instead of doing a detailed study. And this draws on local knowledge. Another key aspect is, I mentioned in my presentation, ensuring linkage and alignment with existing plans and projects. So to actually identify, where the city is building infrastructure, what type of infrastructure is it building, and then to assess that, okay, can I add on elements to this which enhance the climate benefits? So that has a higher chance of success, rather than proposing something which is completely out of the blue for the city. And accordingly, you can, of course, there is scope, and you should always be ambitious and propose innovative technologies and solutions, but you can scale these accordingly. So I think these two, and like I said in my previous responses, commitment from the senior level, and also ensuring that there's dedicated capacity. These are some of the important things.
Thank you. Is there anything you would like to add, Chirag? Any 3 key points that cities should keep in mind?
Yeah, I think I'll talk about 5 key points. One of the slides that I presented about mainstreaming gears. So political leadership, or leadership at the city level or any other level, is very important. Identifying the coordination mechanisms. Climate action plan has to be implemented by or implemented in coordination with multiple agencies. Right? So you need to have buy-in from multiple departments. You also need to build the capacities or knowledge, so that each revision of the climate action plan is rooted in the science, as well as it reflects the current circumstances that the city is facing. And then the financing becomes an important aspect as well. So those 5 gears are something I would definitely recommend for all the cities to look into, or rather any region or any